What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about these side villains in Gotham Knights, honestly, one final time, at least until the game comes out. So, the Q&A is going on Discord, and there's some pretty okay questions. None have super stood out to me, and if there is anything else that stands out, I'll make a video on it once the whole thing is over. Maybe tomorrow, we can kind of look at all the questions, but there was a very, very interesting one specifically asking about the side villains. I'm shocked that they answered it. I really am. And the answer is a little ambiguous. I guess it probably depends on how you read it, but it does seem like the three villains, Mr. Freeze, Clayface, Harley Quinn, are the three villains in this game. Now, that's looking at it from a certain angle. It seems like, obviously, the Court of Owls, right, the main villain, and there's still those factions. Everybody still kind of believes, right, 4 other factions are going to be running amok, in Gotham. And whether or not other villains make their way into the main story, that could totally happen. But in terms of these villain quest lines with, beyond the scope of the story, it seems like it's just those 3. So let's read the question, let's read the answer, and then we'll talk about how I feel about it. So, literally, the question is, how many villain stories will we have? Is it going to just be Mr. Freeze, Harley, and Clayface, or are we potentially going to see more? And then the answer is, yep, our trio of rogues gallery all have some unfinished business with our heroes, but don't forget, we have the Court of Owls as our main threat in the game, and with all of them running amok in Gotham, the Batman family is going to have their hands full. We've put a huge amount of effort into making these villains have their own epic character arcs, and they are pretty content heavy, so we are excited to show you our spin on these iconic villains in a Gotham City without Batman. Now, you can look at that yep, the very first word of their answer, as like maybe that means there's more. I look at it as they're answering, because the question is it just going to be them, or is it going to be more? They say yep. I think the yep is, it is just them. It is just them. But, the way they detail it makes it sound like, you got those 3. They're going to be very content heavy. They're going to be very big. And then you're going to have the Court of Owls. So like I said, I do think they're not telling us about some of the other factions that kind of control the city. That's fine. But at the same time, and we have to differentiate between that and these villain stories, because when you maybe take out a watchtower or whatever, that's not going to be the same thing as doing a Harley Quinn mission, right? Does that make sense? So those two things are different. The Court of Owls, obviously, through the main story. And then, like I said, I think there'll be other villains in the main story, but it does seem like it's just these 3. So, all right, the question then comes down to, is that enough? I'm on the fence on it. I tweeted it out, and I kind of got mixed response on Twitter as well. Some people are saying, yeah, that's totally fine. Some people are saying, no, that's not good, or they better be worth it. And I guess that's kind of where I'm at is, and I do believe in this, it's equality over quantity, right? So if you have 3 side villains that are incredible, then, and that would be better, in my opinion, than 6 that are not so good. At the same time, numbers do matter. And we've talked about it 1,000 times, going from Arkham Knight to this game, and, going from however many villains, I think there was like 10 or 11, I think people have given the actual number, to 3, I think people are going to be pretty disappointed. I look at it as just opportunities to tell new stories with new characters, right? That's how I've always kind of viewed it. That's why I'd be okay with Joker, or I'd be okay with Hush or whatever, right? Because it's like you can make them new again, and you could tell their story in a world without Batman. Now, does it open up the possibility for DLC to have these villains kind of, or new villains, right, up here in DLC? I think it does. I really think it does. But I think that's kind of where I stand. I'm disappointed from a numbers perspective, where 3 is very little, and if they only take 2-3 hours to beat, now we don't know that. I'm kind of just assuming that's how long it's going to take. I mean, if they take longer, then that's fine, I guess. It's just, is it a greedy thing? I guess so. I want to see more. I want to see a Killer Croc. I want to see what a 2-hour mission thing with him looks like. Does that, what I mean? So that's kind of where I'm at. So I am disappointed in it, but I do want to leave the door open, just cracked open just a little bit, where, yeah, if they're really good, I'll give them some slack, because if they're super good, now, here's the issue. If they're not good, if they're too short, if they're not impactful, that will make it even worse, because there's only, if those same things happen and there's 6 villains, you can at least say there's 6. So it's a contrast. Those two things kind of go hand in hand, where It can work if it's really good. If it's really bad, or it's just not really anything, and there's not a lot of them, then you can look and say, well, I would have rather had 6 of these and not have them be impactful, because 3 of them aren't impactful. So I'd rather have 6. And I think that's where you can kind of walk yourself into, which I do think is fair. I absolutely, because then it's like, well, why can't you just cut like an hour off of each of these villains and make 1 or 2 more? And so I could see both sides. I really do. And I could see people being fine with it, completely cool, and looking at that quality over quantity, as long as it's good. But I could also see people saying 3. You have 3 side villains, and that could be pretty disappointing. And to me, I would lean, a little disappointing. But we haven't had the game. And again, it's not like those 3 villains are the only ones, because I do think there'll be more throughout the game, just not in their own like unique tales. Like you can do their side missions, or you don't have to. I mean, they're not required, so you don't have to do them. But we're not going to get that with anybody else. At least that's how I read it. You could say, yep, our trio of rogue galleries, and then it keeps going. You could read that as like, yep, there'll be more. But considering he says trio, a trio 3, that to me kind of seals it, that yeah, no, it is only 3. Don't expect any more. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you guys are subscribed, bell icon turned on, and I'll see you all on the next one.